finding something that you're specialized in, and then launching an agency business around that.
The corporate landscape continues to stretch horizontally, and that real specialists are just primed to capitalize on the volatility and the innovation we're seeing right now. I know what I expect to do, but what happens more often is I've hit that moment where someone offered me a contract and this light bulb goes off that says, wait, if they'll pay me 30 grand for this 6-month contract and I could find 3 more, once you've flipped that entrepreneurial switch, you will take radical responsibility of your income situation. A friend of mine gave me this advice early on. He said, you know your pricing is right when it makes you a little bit nauseous, to quote people.
Okay, the reason I'm stoked to talk to you is because we're talking about my favorite way, and I'm not making this up. You can go search my Twitter history. My favorite way to get into entrepreneurship, which is finding something that you're specialized in, that you're better than almost anybody else at, and then launching an agency business around that. Because a lot of people want to get into entrepreneurship, but they always think, oh, I got to do the big sexy thing. I got to do a tech startup. I got to buy a company. I got to go sign an SBA loan. No, the easiest and most predictably successful way to get into entrepreneurship is to build an agency around a specialized skill set that you have as an entrepreneur. And you help entrepreneurs do that and think about, how do I actually monetize this? How do I actually plan for it and achieve the result that I actually want? Is that right? Fair?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's basically this bet that the corporate landscape continues to stretch horizontally, and that real specialists are just primed to capitalize on the volatility and the innovation we're seeing right now. And that looks like taking what I'm doing in this corporate umbrella and doing independently as a consultant.
And it's not as sexy like, Chris Kerner.
Chris Kerner is not as sexy. That's what I've always said.
Oh no, he's a very sexy. I have slept with him many times.
Many days. Yeah.
Like the stuff that he posts about is like his wheelhouse. It's like, dude, you could go up in one weekend. What you need to do is buy this from Home Depot and you'll split it into 3 parts, and then you'll put it on Facebook Marketplace and you're going to get people to contact you. And then you bought it for 5, you'll sell it for 10. Like, he's a hustler. He's always been a freaking hustler. And those are, for many people, like kind of like the entrepreneur porn, like, oh, it's going to get them into entrepreneurship. But what we're talking about is my favorite, because it's not like this get rich quick scheme. And I don't mean to paint Chris as the get rich quick scheme at all, right? Like, I think his ability to launch businesses and to think about ways to make money is exceptional. And I think it's important for people like this who are trying to start their businesses. I was just trying to create the stark contrast. Anyways, the best way is, hey, I have a skill set. I know that I want to be an entrepreneur for whatever reason. I want to have control over my time. I want to have control over my money. I want to make more money. I want to travel, whatever it is. But many people want to do that at 22, and they don't have a specialized skill set. So I tell many people, go get a job, get some experience, build a skill set, and then you can build a company around that. And then you land and expand. And then you like sort of build out these adjacent offerings and you continue to grow. When people come to you, are they like, hey, I've made the jump, Zach, what am I doing? Or are they like, I want to make the jump, what do I do?
Usually we would prefer it's the latter, right? Like we'd prefer to say like, we're inside this maybe 5-year window and I know what I expect to do. But what happens more often is I've hit that moment where someone offered me a contract. Maybe it's even the company I work with, and they're like, hey, we're having layoffs, but we're going to retain you for this. And you can work as a contractor for a while. And this light bulb goes off that says, wait, if they'll pay me 30 grand for this 6-month contract and I could find 3 more and I could do this, like suddenly, oh, wait a second, like I'm here. And so it looks more like that a lot of the time. And if we can plan it out ahead of time, naturally, we prefer to. But it's really just maybe a good characterization like you're using with Chris or even yourself. Is like almost no one is an empire builder. Like that. I think that the truth of the matter is, especially for like our little bubble of SMB folks, it's almost no one that builds the really enormous empire. And it's almost no one who is, if I took everything away from you today, you're gonna scrap independently like that. Natural, like as a predisposition. You can learn it, you can train it, you can grow, and you can scale it. You can do all those things. But that first step, almost no one is, I'm straight out of high school, I'm building an empire, watch me go. But those are the stories we hear, right? That is
totally sexy. Agree. I talk about this with Chris, where I'm like, I think that there are 2 types of entrepreneurs. There's Chris, he's a hustler.
If you went and robbed him blind right now, tomorrow he would like, I'm going to go mow some lawns. I'm going to upsell him to tree trimming or whatever. And I don't know him personally, but like I've heard enough that I'm pretty sure.
He's never had a job. He's only ever worked for himself. He's just always been a hustler, right? He's like, oh, I bought this for $5. I can sell it for $7. Just like always looking for the flip. I'm not wired that way. I think then there's the other end of the spectrum, which you said is like accidental entrepreneurs who are like, I'm really good in this job. I've got a great salary. And then all of a sudden a layoff happens or an unexpected life change happens. And they have this opportunity kind of fall in their lap to consult. And they're like, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm just a consultant. Like, well, no, that's your entrepreneurship. Like, welcome to the club.
If you even take a further subset and say, of the people who are predisposed to being empire builders, most of them are failing, like by the numbers, or will fail a bunch of times and then hit it out of the park, right? Like that is just how it actually goes. And then we get this confirmation of, oh, look how much people won. Versus I'm really specialized in getting approval and writing curriculum for charter schools. Almost no one can do that. Almost no one in the entire country does that. And I just realized that if I don't just do that for this one organization, if I do it from on my own, I can triple my revenue and own my time. And I can just start with one project. Like how many more people are predisposed to make that little switch versus like, no, I'm going to burn it all down and I'm going to start from scratch right now.
Give me an example. I know that was a hyper-specific example. Do you have anybody who's like, they were doing X, you don't have to out them, but they were doing this specific job role. And now, you know, a year later, 2 years later, this is kind of where they ended up from their accidental entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So people who are in-demand skill sets in corporate. So imagine like you're a data analyst and you've developed these skills and you're doing it really well. And you're able to take that and say, I'm good at this in my corporate bubble. And I make that connection through my personal network probably to do this for a really specific vein of industry or use. Like, and I'm thinking of a specific example.
I'm an engineer who
exactly right.
You know, focuses on.
I'm an engineer who specifically does surveys for utilities or for energy industry or something like that. Those are real examples of the types of people we've talked to before. That's a really narrow skill set. And it turns out that as you expand our whole economy right now geographically and informationally, and I can reach out on LinkedIn Sales Navigator and find anyone who's in a decision-making role for that kind of thing in like 40 seconds for $90 a month, that I can do that right now. And what we just see is that switch get flipped of, oh, somebody, even if it's like, go for $1,000, like how you just immediately, instead of being not disposed to being an empire builder, everyone is well equipped to say, well, they'll pay me $1,000 if I do that 100 times a year. That'd be this. What if I charge 5,000? What if I charge 20,000? And that math is easy, you know?
Okay. So if I'm a brand new person, I'm in this spot, I come to you, Zach. What's the first conversation we have?
The first conversation around money and planning, we're always starting with income and expenses for your household. We just found time and time again, the number one thing people are lacking at all levels of wealth, and especially as it applies to actual decision-making, is a 12-month cash flow projection. You can imagine like your business cash conversion cycle of put money out, how long does it take me to get it back? Almost no one has that for their home. And so we've taken this, what we just call it our action plan, but we just take this template and we say, if you've got this much contract or outside income, how does that feed to your personal life? And if you've got other income, let's put that in there too. And if you've got a cash floor that you want to maintain, because you should, we call that an emergency fund if you want to, but a cash floor for your goals in your life and your tax payments and stuff like that. When do you run out of cash? How many contracts do you need to secure when to not run out of cash? How many do you need to secure to not run out of cash and fund your other goals and your investments and things like that?
So are they coming to you with a business? Are they like, hey, I am doing consulting. This is my typical contract value. This is my typical scope of work, how long it takes me, blah, blah, blah. Or are they mainly coming to you like, I want to do this. Help me figure it out.
Yeah, we see both. The two ways it starts is,
hey, I don't know if you remember this, but when we started this podcast, we entered into a social contract. I would spend time, energy, and money producing this podcast, interviewing these individuals and giving you insights into how to build, buy, start, grow your business. And you would like, subscribe, and leave me 5-star review. Now, out of that, we both get to talk to really cool people and hear really cool insights. We both get a ton of value. But I just want to help you keep your word. So would you do me a favor? will you go leave a 5-star review for me on Apple or Spotify? It would really help. And if you want, even share this with a friend.
I have a business and I am really not able to figure out my tax situation, usually from like a cash flow perspective. Like, I'm afraid I won't have cash on hand to pay this tax bill. Or if I find myself where, I'm thinking of someone, they're doing around $300,000 in revenue, but it's so easy as a business owner to get into that cycle of being strapped for cash when something like a big tax bill comes in. How do I get more proactive about that? That's one area. The other is specialists that are still in corporate world who have like equity in their businesses. And they're like, I want to leverage this to make a leap. I've done the thing, like this is my moment here where I probably won't have a deal that this will go this well again at a public company or potentially private company, but public company. I want to leverage that well to make this leap because I want to buy my independence back.
Oh, so they've earned some stock. They have like mid 6 figures to low 7 figures. And they're like, all right, how do I make this work for me?
Yeah. You imagine you're at one of the companies that, let's just use SpaceX as an example and say, I'm really specialized here. I've done the thing. My stock has gone crazy. They provide exercise windows. I'm allowed to do this. And I just want, like, maybe I need to move back home because my parents are getting older and I want to figure out, how do I consult? And maybe I've been thinking about buying a business when I get back home, but it just occurred to me that I could secure a few contracts and make ends meet in whatever, Scranton, Pennsylvania, without much trouble as a SpaceX, on my resume.
I'm a W-2 entrepreneur and I'm like, all right, I've got this skill set. I know I want to make the leap. I've got some cash, but how much cash do I need? How much time is it going to take me? That's when you're kind of having the conversation with some of these entrepreneurs who are making the leap.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Okay. And the first piece is, all right, let's just map out your cash flow. What are your expenses every month? That's kind of the scariest part, right? Like, you have anxiety and you're scared because you don't know. We're mainly scared of the unknown. Once we kind of have an idea of what the fear is, it makes it less scary for us. And that's like your first step, right? As you're like, okay, cool. Let's figure out where the outlays are.
Like this, I say this all the time. Once you flip that entrepreneurial switch, I think you'll get this. Like, you will take radical responsibility of your income situation. Like, if it all burns down tomorrow, I'm going to figure something out, and you'll be confident you can in that optimism. Your spouse does not necessarily share that trait. And so when we map this out, and it's like this super simple spreadsheet, like I told my partner is a spreadsheet genius. I'm like, you have to take 3 shots and let me hit you in the head before you're allowed to make a spreadsheet that anyone sees. That we can put this in front of you and you and your spouse can both see this is how the plan actually works. Like, this is what we just did. We moved last year. This is what we did. And I was like, it seems like it'll work. This is what it looks like for it to work. And that ability to share it as a household is so incredibly empowering and different from most people's conception of how do I like do a financial plan or get advice.
Yeah. So like, step 1 isn't even who's your ICP? How do you acquire customers? What's your lifetime value? Step 1 is like, okay, cool. Love it. You have a skill set. Sounds like you have an idea of kind of what you want to do. Is your spouse on the same page as you? And what's the financial plan? Like, let's build out the financial plan so your spouse can
confident.
Yeah. I really, really like that. I've been tracking my net worth since 2017, which doesn't sound like a long time, but when you like track all of your accounts every single month in a snapshot starting in 2017, it actually gets really crazy. Cause like in 2020 is when I started buying and selling businesses. And then it was like, well, then how do I account for like unrealized gains? And how do I account for equity in my business? And how do I account for cash flows that may happen but aren't guaranteed? Because it's very different when you have a W-2 versus being an entrepreneur. You don't know what your cash flow situation is going to look like. So when you're doing the mapping, how do you map it? Are you like ultra conservative and you're like, okay, let's just map expenses and not even look at what your income is going to be? Or do you have like a base level of, and you'll probably get this amount of income coming in?
So it depends a little bit on the nature of their business, but I use a toggle that's essentially prospective versus contracted revenue for a consultant type person, because we should be tracking prospects. They should be tracking prospects. Like, all of us as business owners should be tracking prospects. And we can say, this is where you're on the most optimistic end. And I've had some clients that really like to lean into kind of handicapping their close odds and say, I'm not really confident about this one, so let's not count that. And that can be, you could decide how you want to do that, but you should do some version of it. And then,
so in that, you're helping them set up almost like their pipeline. where it's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, let's talk about what business you have. Like, what's your deal flow look like currently? What percentage you're going to convert? Like, you're like building out a business operating system for them.
A little bit. Like, it's really light. One of the interesting things when you make this consultant leap is that a lot of tools exist for running a business. A lot of tools exist for personal financial planning. You're tracking your net worth. As a consultant, that then overlaps way too much. And so your cash flow feels messy because like, yeah, they paid the business, but like, it's just me. And maybe I paid a contract writer. That's an example that from recently I want to pay a contract writer. So I have like this one expense, but for the most part, it's like income in, expenses out. So how do I think about that? How do I go through that? And I think, we as humans just aren't that good at making that realistic. We default to this bias called mental accounting of like, I think I know where stuff is and I'm counting my income 6 times as I go through how much I can spend and stuff. So we're not taught, like, down the line, we can get into the really fancy levels of financial planning and how do we do things to help you with tax planning and estate planning, things like that. But like, even when you're at $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 of revenue as an independent consultant, it starts with cash. And it starts with your personal balance sheet. And these are not the lofty and sexy ideas like you're saying, but they are the needle movers. Like, they really do turn the dial.
I love this piece too, because you've heard of EOS, like Traction. I'm a visionary. I'm not an integrator.
Yeah.
If you've ever read Traction, that book is not, in my opinion, that book is not written for who we're talking about right now. It's not written for people who are like just starting a business or people who are deciding they want to be an entrepreneur and they go through the agency route like we're talking about. That's kind of written for businesses that have hit product market fit and they're scaling. And so it's like, oh, okay, cool. Now we need to codify, who are we? What do we offer? Who's our ICP? Let's have shared language around our core values. How will we attack things? How do we set goals? And like in the book, it's like, talk to your leadership team and decide upon. And if you don't have a leadership team, like, the book's very difficult to apply to your business. And so like what you're talking about right now, in my opinion, is there isn't a lot that's dedicated to individuals who are just starting out to get a feel for how they organize themselves. Fair?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We've sketched out a few principles that we just call the accidental entrepreneur principles. And one of them is to tell. One of the things is the thing you are is a business owner. And that is an important shift, especially for a specialist, we think, because you think we'll keep data analyst as our general example, or, I am a fractional CMO or whatever. Like, that's what I am. Like, true. But the thing you are now is a business owner. And you are also happen to be employee number 1, who's a marketer or a data analyst. And that sure informs an awful lot, because it tells you, like, what do I need to delegate to do the key things that I have to do? How do I go about that? And if I'm a business owner, if I'm the executive here, I don't get to just abdicate the responsibility of not looking at my books or my cash flow. Like, it's my job. I am a business owner. Principle number 1 is that cash flow is king. When we sketch those out, the moment that income hits you as a business owner of any kind, like, I don't care if you've got an LLC and I don't care if you've set up your books yet, but the income hit, the moment that happens, the thing you are is a business owner. And that can inform a lot of other things that you do.
Okay, what are the other tenets?
Oh, I'll have to pull up to go in order.
No, just pretend like you know them off the top of your head.
So I know them off the top of my head.
Just kidding.
And we should go through them. That we say, no one's giving you permission. No one's giving you permission as a charter school expert to go out and put your skills on the open market as a consultant. No one has to. And you can still do it.
No one has to give. So you're like telling them, you're like, hey, look, no one has to give you permission. You got this.
Yeah, no one's coming and no one's going to. No one's going to come tell you, like, by the way, like, come closer. You know this, right? We're big fans of saying the comet already hit. I think I've heard you say things like this where you didn't necessarily think of yourself growing up as an entrepreneur type, but once you did, you can't go back to before you did. It's a friend of mine compares it to being a parent. Once you became a parent, you will never go back to whoever you were before. And like, maybe it's
I can't unsee the things that I saw.
Exactly.
I can't unsmell that poopy diaper, Zach.
I will never go so many months without sleeping again. But that's it. Like I can't go back to the knowledge that I generated $1,000 on my own for the first time. It will forever shape what I do next. And that includes how well equipped I am for the next W-2 role. That's fine. It's not like that's not an option, but you've shaped how that's going to look now.
So that first one, no one's giving you permission. What's the hardest thing for most people to get over? Because it sounds like you're trying to rewire their brain from an employee to an entrepreneur mindset. Is there a moment for most people where it's like, oh, this is the thing they have to do in order to feel that way? Or is it different for everybody?
Yeah, I'm sure it's different for everybody. I would suggest that it's that light bulb moment when that first contract gets offered to you, whether it's a buddy who's like, hey, you're an accountant, right? Can you just like look at my financials over here? Or you're a marketer, right? Can you just look at this Facebook ad I'm putting together for my business? And you're like, yeah, sure, no problem. Just like, buy me lunch. And when that light bulb hits, there's this question of, oh, like, am I allowed to do this? It's like, is it okay for me to do this? And I don't mean like, does your company, your W-2 job want you to not do that? I mean, I have a job. Am I allowed to go out and just do things? That's been, everybody's been saying that lately, but it's not natural. Like it is we need that reminder. You actually can go to Waffle House with your buddy and look over their marketing plan and get paid $100 or a waffle or whatever. And that changes things.
I remember this shift in thinking where, like you said, it's both positive and negative. On the one hand, it's like, I don't need permission from anybody. I can do whatever I want. Wow, should we grow to 10 million? Yeah, we could set that goal if we wanted. Should we just do 1 million? Oh yeah, we could be 1 million. But then the flip side is also, we just got sued. And it's like, well, who do we call? They're in the room. They're already here. It's you. You know what I mean? Like,
do you ever still, as a grown adult, think like, man, I really need a grown up right now? Like, it'd be really helpful if I could find a grown up.
It'd be really nice if I could phone a friend right now.
Mom.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, all the time. And anybody who's in entrepreneurship, that is a funny thing though, is like you do get to a point where it's also very freeing where you're like, well, we can make decisions. Oh, we got sued? Okay, cool. Well, we're in control of this. So let's figure out who we need to talk to and how we respond to it, et cetera. It can also be very overwhelming at times in the middle of the night when you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, if we lose this customer, we lose 30% of our business. And there's nobody else who's going to figure this out but me. If I don't figure out the pitch.
There's not something like that. There's not something that prepares you to be in that, like the buck stops.
Parenthood, I think, is the closest. Being a parent is the closest, but it's incredibly different. But it's very similar. Okay, so what's the second tenet? So no one's going to give you permission. What's next?
So we can walk through. So we said cash flow is king. The moment that money comes in and hits your situation, like things change, and that has demands on what you should do with that. But it's still things change. The thing you are as a business owner, that's one of our actual principles.
Don't go away. So cash flow is king. Is that one of the three, or is that like a sub tenet?
Yeah, we've got seven accidental entrepreneur principles. That cash flow is king. The moment money comes in or out, I'm spending money to grow a business. Things have changed. You are a business owner is important to embrace. That is fundamental shift in like this role I'm taking. You can think of the E-Myth if you've ever read that as a great book around that idea. Your org chart you were talking about earlier is even if you fill every role, like the thing you are preeminently as a business owner. We talk about this relentless execution as one of the principles in conjunction with that no one's giving you permission, because the thing that gets you where you want to go is to just keep doing it for the most part, just keep doing things for the most part. And that comes hand in hand with that no one's giving you permission to go do those things. But if you wake up and do the most key things every day as an independent consultant type person, you have exponentially increased your surface area for likelihood of success. I would love to hear your feedback. You've run bigger companies than like a consultant type person would. We started out talking about delegation. We have clients who are doing things like, I need to hire a contract writer, or I need to outsource certain things. The way we've actually taken to describing that seems to resonate more than most people is like, you're bad at most things. And that's perfectly fine. Lean into that a little bit more. Like, you're actually just not that good at almost anything.
Yes, I totally agree. Dude, there was a Harvard study that I read 10 years ago, and they looked at high performers And one group of the high performers, they said, don't worry about anything else, just focus on what you're good at. And the other group of high performers, they said, try to work on your weaknesses. And which group of high performers do you think did better? It was the group who didn't do anything else other than the thing that they were good at. And that has stuck with me. It's really like, hey, know yourself and what you're good at and what you're bad at, and delegate out. So that's like the first thing that helped me understand this concept. But the second thing is, and this is a little bit more tactical, is I think that entrepreneurs are worried about delegating too early, and they delegate out the thing that is most important to their business. So when, like you were saying, entrepreneurs start a business, they've got to think that that's their core competency and that they're better than anybody else in the world at. Don't, under any circumstances, delegate that first, ever. Find the things that you're not good at. Find the things that you don't need a specialist for. Find the things that taste like chicken in every business and start delegating those things. Payroll, AP, receivables, credentialing, like these things that are just not differentiators, and then slowly offload as you continue to grow. Don't just think, oh, I gotta find somebody else who can do what I do. Because if you outsource you outsource your business, and now your business is just the same as anybody else. There's no differentiator, and you either stagnate or you lose traction. So I'm a big believer in that. It's like, yes, delegate for sure, but be smart. Like, do it over time.
For the people who are going to be looking to build a bigger business, I think that this consultant example kind of carries some extra water, where you can say, oh, I'm here at a company being a data scientist. I'm going to go independent and be a data scientist, partly because I want to get rid of all the crap that comes from being under the corporate umbrella. Like, I don't want to do a morning meeting with my team on Mondays, and I don't want to sit in HR meetings that don't apply to me, and I don't want to have to deal with 74 emails a day for things that aren't mine. So you want to, like, I want to be a specialist, kind of full stop. And then you become a business owner, and oh, lo and behold, there are other things that come with being a business owner. But that's where you can say, for me, and increasingly so with AI and stuff, that I can be a specialist business owner and delegate my bookkeeping and delegate my marketing and delegate. And by delegate, could be just outsource too, but that doesn't get you out of the specialty, right? And for an independent consultant type, they're leveraging that as much as possible. But as you build a bigger business, it's easy to lose sight of that. You see that a lot of times.
Again, delegate the things that aren't core to your business. I think that's incredibly important. Don't hold on to the things just because you want to be cheap or because you want to say, like, for whatever reason. Get rid of the stuff that's not core to your business. Mark Zuckerberg, like, has talked about this. He's like, I wear the same outfit every day because I don't even want to spend mental energy thinking about what shirt should I wear. Stupid example, but that compounded thousands of times a day saves mental energy and makes you more mentally acute, aware, etc. So I think there's a lot of value in that, but he's not outsourcing the key decisions at Facebook, and you should never, ever, ever do that. But you should be smart early on, like hire specialists, get people in the door who can take those things off of your plate, because they still will be headaches if you don't actually create a plan for them. Like Mark Zuckerberg's plan is, I'm just going to buy all the same clothes and wear the same clothes. It's not, I'm not going to worry about what I wear and then never buy clothes. Like, he's got clothes that are there for him. It'd be a big problem if he didn't have clothes there, but he's like, he's whatever. He's created his plan to kind of take it off of his plate. Let me ask you this. I want to go back to cash is king.
Okay.
I think that many people who like get into entrepreneurship struggle with this for reasons that are apparent and reasons that are not apparent. Some people like to talk about profit, and it's like, well, on my taxes, we made a $700,000 profit, but their accounts receivable is through the roof. And so they didn't actually take home that money, right? So cash flow is incredibly important from that perspective. You need to watch your cash flow. But I also think people don't spend enough time on pricing, understanding where they need to be in order to have a margin. Some people are like, I don't care about having a margin. I just want to grow my business. And then they build themselves a business that's a prison.
Yeah.
Some people are like, well, my service is amazing, so I'm going to charge a really high number. So they get one or two clients, but then they've only ever got this like really small niche business. When you're looking at cash flow, what are the things you look at and like try to help entrepreneurs understand as they're getting their head wrapped around it?
So for our set of people, I have a calculation that is made up, to be clear, that is how to set your consulting rate. I highly recommend for this crowd. This is different from a business that you got to manage cogs and find your margins. But for this crowd, you have a lot of data because you're coming out of a corporate role where your skills were shopped on a market across the whole economy, and a company said this is what it's worth. But you can't just charge that because you've got other stuff now that you're a business owner that you've got to deal with. And so we start, and I usually do this calculation and say, you need to know what your hourly rate needs to be. You probably should never price your contracts as an hourly rate because that sounds terrible, but you should know what it is. And that's going to set your bottom guardrail so that you are less prone to take on work that drains you and is outside of your goals. And we do this calculation. And then we say two things. One, the next step is to take it to auction, take it to the market and react to the demands. If you never get a job, but you're confident in your skills and your offering, then your pricing might be too high and, vice versa. But the other thing is if you've already set your rate, I'm just bent to believe that you should probably double your rates. If you're a person setting your own pricing and no one has ever told you and you just went out and offered it, you're probably about 50% of where you should be.
Really?
That's the general, again, this is just like if you're going to do anything and you're going out and shopping your personal skills as a consultant, you're almost assuredly going to underprice at first. If people are saying yes, you should just test the upper bounds. And it's hard, man. It's so hard to do.
Is it easier to pull the price back than ratchet the price up?
Yeah, I don't think it matters that much. Do you mean mentally or like as a company?
Well, I'm just thinking if I'm a consultant who's doing this now and like trying to figure out how to do it full time, if I've gone out and I'm like $100 an hour and I should have priced it at $200 an hour, and now I've got 4 or 5 clients and I'm like, man, it needs to be higher. It's harder to ratchet it up for those clients than in my mind if I went out at $300, got one client, and then I'm like, oh crap, I'm charging way too much. I need to ratchet it down to 200. Like I'm going to go to that client. Either I'll keep it at 300 or I'll ratchet it down.
And they're happy with that, right?
Yeah, it's a much easier, in my opinion, like shift than the other way.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I just don't think it's natural. I don't think it's the natural progression of things. I think we're all prone to, you as an expert in your field could, and maybe you have, I don't know, you could go out and consult for a company and you could charge a lot of money. And you could say, I'm not going to do this again unless somebody pays me double, because you don't want to. Like, I don't need to. Like you could say, I'm going to go for a day to, your background's healthcare, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to a facility and I'm going to I'll go for a day and they're going to pay me $25,000. And that's crazy. That's just bonkers because it's a day of work. But you're like, but I'm just going to do it. And you get somebody to do it. And you say, I don't really like it. I won't do this again unless it's 50. And then you just go shop. You get shopped or referred or whatever. But lo and behold, if they hit your number, then you can just go do it. Is far closer to the natural progression of things, whether it's $25,000 a day or it's $100 an hour, where you just realize what your guardrails should be.
Here's something I struggle with. I am terrible at pricing.
Yeah, everybody is.
Terrible. I have lots of people who reach out to me that are like, oh, would you do a course or would you do consulting for me one-off? And like, how much would you charge a month? I always feel bad. I'm always like, oh, $5,000 a month is probably what I should charge, but that's a lot of money. Does it make sense? I don't know. I just feel bad. I don't know why. It's hard for me mentally to like get to a place where I charge people. Do you find that a lot with these types of, or am I just an idiot and should get over it?
You feel bad. I think it's closer to something that's more insecurity for the average person. You're saying, I'm hearing you say like, I feel guilty if I do this, or I feel like icky, or I'm a nice guy and this is my friend asking for help, I would just help them. Whereas I think the average person feels more insecure. Like, can I deliver value at fill in the blank rate?
Yeah. And it was the same thing in my jobs, or even when I owned businesses. Like I was never motivated by money. It didn't matter if you were like, you could get $100,000 bonus if you do this in the next month. It just wasn't the needle mover for me. There's lots of other things that move the needle, but like the dollars wasn't it. So for me, it's hard time. Anyways.
No, I think like you're just described two separate problems. One is I feel bad for like what I'm charging, or I'm insecure about it. And the other is I don't know what to charge. Like those are not the same problems. And so they probably have different solutions. A friend of mine gave me this advice early on when I had gone independent, and I think it's really good. He's like, your pricing is right when it makes you a little bit nauseous to quote people. And I don't know that that's precisely true, but it's tended to be true for me. It's like if I ever get to where I'm really comfortable with what I'm priced at, maybe it's time to increase price a little bit. Like maybe we should try it. Maybe we should just test it a little bit and find out. And I share that with every single client. It's like, tell me how you feel about your rate. And they're like, it's really, really comfortable. I'm really happy. I'm like, maybe you should notch it up and just see what happens. And if people say no, then that's all right.
In your experience when working with these clients, what percentage of the time when they increase it, do they have to bring it back down?
Oh, I don't know. I can think.
If you were to guess, knee-jerk.
Yeah, not very often. Where
when
you're
talking
changes,
to them and you're like, you're comfortable, you should double your price, or you should whatever, do this. And then they do it. How often are they like, I got to bring it back down, Zach, you were wrong?
If you can convince someone to increase their pricing, they get that market feedback so quickly of like, if nobody buys, then but that's probably not the case for most people, right? There is a difference in kind of nuance. And if you're charging contract rates and you're like a flat fee for this project, then it's multiple levers because you can change your scope of what you do too. And so what I think the trend would be is continually narrowing scope and continually higher dollar amounts for that scope. Does that make sense? Like
it does.
I'm actually doing the highest the least number of things that provide the highest value. That is the highest return on my time as a specialist.
Is that usually what happens when they get started as a consultant? It's like, yeah, I'll offer anything to everybody. And then they whittle down their services over time.
Yeah. Most of the time I would describe it as there's a blank check at the beginning to that first person who offered you a contract. That's what made this whole set all this in motion. And you're like, I don't know what I'll do, but I'm going to go do it. And that's awesome. That's really formative we've probably all been there at one point or another. And then you're like, there was 94 things in this that I wasn't equipped or wasn't the right person or a waste of my time or whatever. And you get smaller and you refine who you work with and you refine exactly what you do, as a subset of your specialty and what the market really needs, what the actual fit is. And this is funny. We haven't talked about the actual financial planning of any of it or anything, but this is the trend that we see. We've had people leave big tech companies. And right now we see the acceleration of the volatility of that industry as a whole. And our bet is kind of just that all ripples up to the best and most premier specialists having the opportunity to do this if they choose to.
From your experience, how long does it take them to go from, all right, I'm testing this out, to I'm doing this full time, I'm making good money, I've got a very clear product and offering, I'm confident in my ability, I've got a good life? Like, how long is that gap?
It's usually 6 months less than they initially planned for, whatever that is. And I can say that specifically because we regularly use what I just call stoplight. So we'll map out your income, your expected income from your projects. And that might be alongside a W-2 or your spouse's W-2 or whatever.
Okay.
And we got red, yellow, green. And red is like, no, we've got to keep our W-2 jobs because that's how we're making the bills work. And then yellow is like, we're seeing the growth of the contract income. Things are working. Like maybe we could just float it if we had to, because we're prepping our cash, whatever. And then green is the target you've set for how much income you want to have, usually net, to make this leap. And I can say pretty consistently that when people hit yellow on an upward trajectory, like, now let's go ahead and do it. I'm in.
Really?
I'm ready to go. Yeah. And that's been fairly consistent,
because they see the traction. They've got confidence.
They see the traction and they've developed their sense of where they want to be. That's not a data set of thousands of people that I pulled to get that. That's just been our anecdotal experience with a few people who came to us with still that W-2. They hadn't made the leap yet. And they're like, how am I really strategic about this?
Okay. So 6 months earlier than they planned. What, on average though, how long were they planning?
Usually it's like a 12 to 18 month window by the time they're talking to us. Usually if they've already started consulting, they've already got this notion. That's not scientific. That's just my sense of thinking back on
I love breaking this down and trying to figure out how to help people more tactically approach entrepreneurship. If people want to come find you, is your website, Twitter, where's the best place to come interact?
Yeah. Follow on Twitter. I share all the tools that we've got routinely and regularly. We've got a lot of resources for people that are looking to make the jump, and man, would love them along for the ride.
You told me before the call you'll do a free consultation with anybody who was referred from this podcast, right?
Dude, you know how you're joking about this? I post like 4 times a week. I'm taking a walk right now. If you have tax questions or whatever, hit me up. And I have probably 3 or 4 awesome calls a week with people from Twitter. And it's awesome. I love it. Like, we just hash it out. It's super fun.
We'll position this as Zach's going to give you a free $15,000 consulting conversation. Just kidding. But seriously, reach out to you, have a conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
All right, man. I love it. We'll talk soon. All right. Hopefully you liked that episode. And if you've made it this far, you're either really committed or you're stuck doing yard work and you can't actually skip on your phone. So while I have you, the show is growing, but I have a favor to ask of you. Will you please help me grow the show? I want to reach more people. There's a couple things that you can do. Like and subscribe is the simplest thing. Obviously, you want to get notifications for when the next episode is coming out. But if you go the next step, will you leave me a review? 5-star on Spotify or Apple. What that does is it tells the algorithm that, oh, hey, this is a high value podcast because more people are leaving reviews for it, and it then pushes it out to more people. So that's why when people are like, will you like and subscribe and put a 5-star rating? It's not just to make themselves feel better. It's actually to get more exposure for the show. So if you do that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you next time.